I came around the blind left above Laurel Creek and found a man standing in the road. Midnight, late October, light rain, fog hugging the guardrail like breath. He stood dead center, arms at his sides, soaked jacket gone darker across the shoulders. He didn't wave, didn't flinch, didn't even squint against my high beams. He watched me roll to a stop 30 yards out and held my eyes like a level. I cracked the window and asked if he was okay. Nothing. His boots were the heavy kind, but his stance was oddly square. Both feet parallel, heels planted like he'd measured the asphalt and chosen a point. I eased forward to slide around him. He stepped once, perfectly, and recentered himself with the nose of my car. Not aggressive, exact. I put it in park and thought about the gravel pull-off. I passed a minute back by a chain gate to a service road. If I reversed to that mouth, he could do whatever he was doing, and I could wait him out. I backed up slow. Fog erased distance. My mirrors were grey. At about 30 feet, he started walking toward me, steady. No phone, no flashlight, eyes locked on mine. Not fast, not slow. A metronome. I found the pull-off by feel and settled the car with the headlights still on him. He stopped in the beams, steam rising off his jacket, blinked once, then stepped out of the light to the right and vanished into fog. I killed the engine to hear better. The quiet came down hard. Creek below, steady. Wind shifting in rhododendron. Then a small clicking near my passenger side, like two pebbles tapped together. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. It drifted from the passenger side to the front, then to the chain gate, then stopped. I flashed the highs off and on. Empty road, gate chain, swinging once and settling. I should have left. Instead, I sat another minute, not wanting to meet him again at the curve. When I finally pulled out, the bend opened to a straight 100 yards ahead. There he was again, center lane, same posture. I don't have a calculation that makes that walk possible without me seeing him cut. There's a power line, right of way, on that slope, clear ground, if you know it. Maybe he used that. Maybe there's a deer path. The fact is, he was there. I didn't stop. I hugged the center line and slid past. He tracked the hood with his face, intent but not hostile, as if checking something precise. As my back tire passed, a soft scrape sounded under the car, like something catching and letting go. I drove. Houses with porch lights appeared like islands. I checked the mirror. 2 wet lines of road, fog hanging in them like smoke. Under my apartment's yellow sodium light, I saw mud smeared high on the bumper. 2 hand-sized prints close together, turned inward a little. I told myself they were just smudges from the road. The next afternoon, I drove the route in daylight. The pull-off was there, the chain gate there, and 10 feet back in the laurel somebody had stacked neat little cairns, 3 stones each, 6 in a row, all facing the road. Tapped, tap, tap twice. I called the sheriff's office. A deputy said they'd had a couple calls about a man in the road that month. They'd driven it, found nothing. Folks camp along the creek, he said. Folks wander out. Call next time. Stay in the car. He said the curve gets strange in fog. He didn't sound surprised. A week later, I found a fabric triangle wedged up under the lip of my trunk. Faded thread, a patch. I looked it up. An old surface mine outfit that shut down before I was born. It might have stuck there from anywhere. It might mean nothing. I still think about the way he stepped to the exact center of the lane without looking. Like a person who de-walked that measurement so many times he didn't need to see it anymore. I don't drive Laurel Creek at night now. I can't tell you what I saw in a way that proves anything. All I have are sounds and shapes. The pebble tap rhythm, the one blink, the scrape under the tire, and the feeling of being folded into someone else's routine, like I'd fallen into a loop that was already running. I went up to my uncle's ridge cabin to winterize it before a hard freeze. No power, tin roof, hand pump by the porch, one room with a loft. Forecast said the rain would hold off. It didn't. By dark, a fine mist settled, and the roof turned into a quiet drum. I lit the lantern, opened the valves, drained the lines, stacked kindling by the stove, and tried to enjoy the sound. At 10, pebbles hit the roof. Not hail, 10 quick taps, then silence. I stepped onto the porch. Lantern light cut a shallow cone. The rain beaded on tin and rolled off the edge. Nothing moved above me but water. I went back inside and told myself the wind had shaken grit loose from a seam. At 11, 3 knocks on the door. Even, patient, knuckles against wood. I put my hand on the latch and said, "Who's there?" Nothing. I opened the door, a crack, then 2, then fully. The yard was a grey smear. The path glistened. No flashlight, no breath, no "Hey man, you got a phone." I closed the door and set the 2x4 Uncle keeps by the frame across the inside. It wouldn't stop much. It made me feel like I'd done something. At 11:20, slow footfalls crossed the porch boards. Each plank spoke in its tone. Post near the pump, window, far end. Weight stopped to the right of the door and settled. The knob turned a fraction and tapped the latch. Then a whisper at the left window. Not words, just the soft drag of air as if a person leaned close to listen. I took the lantern up to the loft and put it behind me, so my face wouldn't T-glow in the window. Through a knothole, I could see the yard, washed flat. The pump looked almost human from above. The woodpile at the trees looked like figures huddled in coats. A shadow parted from the edge of the woods and stood off the porch steps. Shoulders squared to the door. No phone glow, no headlamp, no fidget. It tilted its head a degree like it was leveling a picture. Pebbles skittered again. 3 knocks followed, same pace as before. I thumbed a text to my uncle, someone S. Here, 3 knocks, did you send anyone? And held my phone toward the window. 1 bar flickered and died. The porch boards called out as weight moved again. Light taps on siding under the left window. Not a stick, pebbles. 3. From midnight to 3, it never pressed. It paced the porch, paused at the windows, drifted to the yard, returned. Sometimes a thin 2-note whistle rose under the rain. Once a soft scrape under the eave. I dozed in snaps with my boots on, jolting awake at each new small sound like a rope had been tugged. Near dawn the rain loosened. Birds started up, unsure. I opened the door. The yard looked scrubbed. No prints but mine from the pump and woodpile. On the porch rail, under each of the 3 windows, someone had arranged little groups of 3 pebbles, of fingers width apart. 6 groups total. Under the left window, waist height. 3 faint wet smudges where fingertips had rested. I walked the yard edge and studied the tree line. The woodpile was wood again. The laurel was laurel. 2 partial prints off the bottom step pointed straight out. Toes angled slightly inward like a person who destood a long time and let their feet settle. 2 days later, I came back with my uncle. He listened without smiling. He said a man used to winter in the timber cut a decade back. A man who didn't trust voices. He'd tap for food. You left a can on the step and he'd be gone by the time you opened the door. The cut healed over. The tapping stopped. Maybe someone new had found the habit. He showed me 3 shallow round dents at shoulder height on the door, worn smooth by knocks over years, not nights. I'd never noticed them. He ran his thumb across and said, "Huh," like feeling an old scar. I still use the cabin. I latch the door differently now. I don't whistle while I split wood. If I hear 3 knocks again, I don't know what I'll do: open, ignore, or set a can on the step and turn the lantern low. The part that sticks isn't fear, it's the patience. Whoever stood out there didn't ask, didn't force, didn't speak. They matched the roof's rhythm and waited, like the cabin itself had taught them the beat. I closed the big box store at 2 a.m. The lot was a wet grid under 3 tired lights, with the ridge looming black behind the retaining wall. My car sat mid-row, nose out, same spot I always used. I heard the rubbery squeak of cartwheels and looked left at a kid with earbuds pushing a train. When I looked right, a figure stood under the far light across an aisle. And 3 islands down, hood up, hands in pockets, body angled toward my row without quite facing me. I didn't change my pace. If you change, you give someone else your rhythm. I walked the line between islands, keys already in hand. The angle between us shifted. In the moment it took to look down at my fob and back up, he'd drifted to cars closer, using the backs of trucks as cover, keeping 1 lane and 2 islands between us. He wasn't walking at my car, he was paralleling me, adjusting with each small change I made, like he meant to arrive in a place relative to mine, not at his own destination. I hit unlock early to get the chirp over with. My hazard lights blinked. He tipped his head like he recognized the car. I slid in, closed, locked, and started the engine. The rear camera showed wet lines and the lower arc of a bumper to spaces over. In the dark beneath that arc, pale flashed once, maybe the inside of a hand. I shifted to reverse, eased back farther than usual, then cut the wheel hard to keep my driver's side away from where he'd been. He came up sharp in the mirror for a half second, hood still up, cheap nylon jacket with reflective piping, chin tipped so his face stayed in shadow. His left hand hovered an inch from my rear door, seemed like he was feeling for a habit. The handle didn't move. The door was locked. He peeled away without breaking stride and headed toward the darker cars near the retaining wall. If he'd banged, I would have had a story with a clean edge. The way he edited his plan mid-step was worse. I took the exit by Garden Center. The plate clinked when I hit the speed bump like a loose spoon in a drawer. It had never done that. 2 turns into town. A sedan with mismatched headlights tucked 2 cars back. I changed speed slightly. They matched. I took an unnecessary turn. They took it. I circled the courthouse block. They circled. At the next light, I drifted to the left lane last second. They committed right and kept straight. The relief didn't land. It's hard to shake the feeling that you've been measured. Morning light showed my plate hanging loose on one side. The screw lay in the frame like somebody had started it by hand and quit. A skinny zip tie looped loose on my driver's mirror. I cut it off and told loss prevention. We watched footage. A hooded figure enters the frame at 2:11, hugs the truck line, pauses twice in the exact blind spots my camera gave me the night before. When a security truck rolls through, the figure sinks behind an SUV and disappears for 40 seconds. When it passes, he reappears, 6 spaces closer, still 1 row over, still paralleling. He never looks up. He never looks down at a phone. He never changes his pace. At 2:16 he exits toward the break in the wall. You can't see it from above, but there's a gravel cut the maintenance truck uses to reach the creek. From halfway down that ramp, a person could crouch and watch feet under cars, time door checks with cart squeals, and climb back under cover. 2 minutes later, a sedan with 1 dull headlight and 1 bright leaves the lot behind me. Grainy, no plate. A deputy said what deputies say. We get travelers, folks living in cars, bored kids, desperate ones. Drive away, park under better light, get eyes on people, not screens. All true. It doesn't touch the sensation of a pattern tightening around you while you, still telling yourself nothing is happening. I moved my spot under the front cameras where the light is clean and the office sees every step. The ridge still looms. The creek still talks in the culvert. The lot still keeps time with its own squeaks and hums. When people ask me what the scariest part was, they want a face. I tell them it was the delay between the cart's squeal and the pale flash beneath my bumper, like the lot was practicing with me instead of the other way around. I hiked the old fire road behind our town's water tower because I needed a loop I didn't have to think about. Late afternoon in March, air raw and clean, leaf litter slick with melt. The map shows a simple figure eight between two ridges with a spur that drops to a creek and a collapsed footbridge. I'd done it enough times to carry the turns in my feet. I threw a bottle and a headlamp in my pack anyway. Appalachia will make a fool of you if you don't respect how fast light gets eaten. The first odd thing was a fresh blaze on a poplar, a neat square of orange paint where there had always been blue. The second was a new cairn, 3 flat stones stacked at knee height on the inside of a switchback. I noticed that kind of stuff. Old habits. Someone's out here keeping trails alive, I thought. I followed the orange where the blue had been, and didn't question it when the tread cut slightly lower along the slope than I remembered. The light thinned. The ridge to my right turned from trees into a wall of rhododendron, so dense you could bounce a throw off it. Half an hour later, the orange blazes put me onto a new path, a narrow stride-wide track of compacted soil that looked young, its edges still crisp. It felt like walking on a decision someone had made last week. The track carried me into a shallow saddle I didn't recognize. I should have stopped there. Instead, I saw another cairn, 3 stones again, this time with a twig laid across the top like a dash, pointing toward a gap. The gap opened to a little shelf above the creek. The sound was close, flatter than usual, like water moved through wood instead of over rock. My map had no shelf here. The shelf had no footprints but mine. A neat ring of pebbles sat at its edge, waist height up the slope side, like knuckles resting. I told myself new volunteers had rerouted to fix erosion. The thought didn't match the way the cairns sat exactly where my eyes wanted to go next. When my phone dropped from 2 bars to none, the air felt heavier. I turned back to retrace my steps and saw I'd been following more than paint. Fresh boot prints went my way in the damp leaves, deep heel, light toe, narrow stride. On the way back, a second set appeared that hadn't been there on my way in. Wider toe, shallower heel, toes angled slightly inward. The 2 sets braided for 20 yards, separated, then braided again. I kept my pace steady. The map in my head wanted a left bend and a short climb to the fire road. The orange blazes wanted me to drift right on that young path. I cut left against the paint to rejoin the old blue route and hit a deadfall I didn't remember. A trunk lay across the tread, bark scuffed bright like someone had rolled it there recently. On the far side of that trunk, the dirt was smooth, as if brushed with a palm. I stepped over, heart climbing faster than the slope. The light drained by the minute. I pulled the headlamp from my pack and kept it off, saving it. Trails hold you better in available light than in a tunnel of your own making. I listened for the water tower's faint hum. I heard the creek adjust, a long wooden creak under the rush like a stalled wheel. The next blaze I found was blue again, but the square was old, almost eaten by bark. I felt relief rise and then stall. A fresh orange square sat on the same trunk, 12 inches above it, neat and new. 2 choices, painted. I picked blue and climbed. After 30 yards, a cairn appeared on a stump with the top stone shaved clean as a plate. A line of pebbles crossed at 3, then space, then 3 like a code. A branch cracked low behind me, not from weight, but from a foot snagging what it didn't see. I didn't turn. I kept moving and counted my steps out loud like I was pacing a field. 22, the next bend. 15 to the log. 10 to the small wash. I told myself I'd denamed the town S3 pizza places at the top of my breath. If I was just spooking myself. I reached the wash and said the names. Something shifted upslope, careful but late, like it wanted to pause before I did and missed. I gave in and used the headlamp. The beam hit a new blaze, orange again, on a tree ahead. Beneath it, at my ankle, 3 flat stones sat stacked where no cairn had been on my way in. Wet leaves stuck to their sides. I knocked them over with my boot without meaning to, and felt childish for doing it. At the next rise, a rectangle of fading daylight showed the fire road. I stepped onto gravel and turned to look. The young track I'd followed didn't meet the road at all. It ran parallel to it for 20 feet, hidden by laurel, then bled back into the woods. If I'd stayed on the paint, I would have walked past the exit. 10 yards below it, in a place where the road looks like a long slope of leaf-littered ground. I pictured myself 20 minutes later, 30, wondering why the sound of the creek never shifted right. Near the water tower, I met a man with a dog. He wore an orange vest that had seen a lot of seasons and a cap with a coal patch. The dog leaned into the leash like it knew me. I asked if the trail crew had rerouted the loop. He looked at my headlamp, then at the ridge behind me, then said, "Ain't no crew up there since spring." He pointed at my shins. "You've been off the cut. Don't follow paint you don't know." I said I'd followed orange because the blue looked old. He shook his head. Orange. He repeated it like a word he didn't use much. Blue's what they do out there. When I got home, I checked the volunteer page. Last update for that loop was 2 years old. Blue blazers only. No reroutes listed. Maybe a hunter marked a path to a stand. Maybe kids. Maybe someone had a reason for guiding a stranger just far enough that the old bearings failed. A week later, curiosity put me back there at noon. The new cairns were gone. The orange squares were gone too, or maybe I couldn't find them. The only fresh marks were scratches on bark at shoulder height in pairs, like something had been carried through sideways. I finished the loop by muscle memory and did not step onto the young track when my eyes wanted to. I let the old blue guide me up to the road and out in clean daylight. I tell people the mountains don't try to lose you. They wait for you to forget how easy it is to lose yourself. That day, I learned how little paint it takes to point a person. Just past the exit, and how fast the ridge will close the door behind you if you don't notice. A buddy and I camped one summer in a hollow behind Pine Ridge. We picked the spot because it was flat, hidden, and close to a stream. By midnight, the fire had burned down to coals, and he fell asleep in his bag. I lay awake listening to the creek and the occasional crack of branches up the slope. Normal forest talk. Then came a new sound: footsteps, deliberate, pacing just beyond the fire's edge. I sat up. My eyes scanned the dark. The firelight only reached a few yards. Beyond that was shadow. The steps circled slow, crunching leaves, never breaking into a run, never stopping. I whispered my buddy's name, but he slept on, dead to the world. I grabbed the hatchet we'd used for kindling and waited. The steps stopped. The woods went still. Then, from upslope, came the unmistakable sound of a whistle, 3 notes, low and hollow. Not an owl, not wind, human. My skin prickled. The whistle repeated once, then silence. I stood, hatchet in hand, and called out, "Who's there?" My voice cracked. The hollow threw it back at me. No answer. Instead, a flicker of light blinked between the trees, a small flame, like a lighter or match, flaring and dying. Then again, closer. My chest tightened. I wanted to wake my friend, but didn't want to draw attention. The 3rd time the flame came, it lasted longer. And I swear I saw the outline of a figure leaning over it, shielding it with a hand. I couldn't take it. I shook my buddy awake. By the time he sat up, the flame was gone, footsteps fading upslope. He hadn't heard a thing. He laughed it off, said I'd spooked myself, but agreed to pack. We doused the coals and left, hiking out with only our headlamps, cutting small cones of light. The next morning, we returned to check if anything had been left behind. The spot upslope where I'd seen the flame held a small circle of stones, blackened with ash. In the ash lay 3 pebbles, stacked neat, like a little cairn. My friend went quiet. He'd been coming here since he was a kid, and swore there'd never been a fire ring on that slope. We left it alone. The woods there feel different now, not hostile, just watched. Like whoever built that ring and whistled those 3 notes didn't mind us borrowing the hollow as long as we remembered we weren't alone. It was past midnight when I left a friend's place outside Hazard. The highway would have been easier, but I cut through a back road I knew from childhood, one that twists between ridges and runs along the river. No lights, no traffic, just my headlights sweeping to narrow lanes. The kind of road where you can drive 15 minutes without seeing another car. About halfway home, I caught headlights behind me. At first I thought nothing of it, just someone else headed the same way. But after 5 minutes, the distance between us hadn't changed. They didn't pass, they didn't drop back, they stayed 2 car lengths behind, steady. My taillights must have been painting their windshield red. I tapped my brakes lightly, a test. They tapped theirs in perfect rhythm. My stomach tightened. I sped up, took a curve sharper than I should have. They stayed right on me, their lights jumping with mine. No horn, no attempt to pass, just mirrored moves. I tried pulling off onto a gravel turnout by the river. I killed my lights, slid in, and waited. The car behind me slowed, stopped in the road, and idled. Its headlights burned white against the trees. We sat like that for what felt like an hour. Then, without warning, the car rolled forward, slow, until it disappeared around the bend. I waited another 5 minutes, heart pounding, before pulling out again. I drove the next mile in silence, half convinced I was clear. Then I saw it, the same headlights, parked sideways across the road ahead, blocking the lane. My breath caught. I stopped 100 feet back, engine idling, trying to decide what to do. The car sat there like a barricade, no movement inside, windows black. I reversed fast, gravel spitting. When I hit the last intersection, I floored it toward the highway. My hands shook on the wheel. 10 minutes later, I burst onto the main road and finally saw other cars, bright with life and safety. I checked my mirrors, empty. The car never followed me out. Next day, I drove back in daylight. The turnout I'd used was clear. The bend where they'd blocked the road was empty. No tire marks on the pavement, no skid, nothing to prove what happened. I never saw that car again, but I still avoid that route after dark. Out there, sometimes the road feels like it belongs more to whoever's following than to you. There's a collapsed mine entrance to ridges over from my hometown. Kids dare each other to throw rocks into the black mouth and listen for the echo. My uncle told me never to go near it. He worked coal and said abandoned shafts hold more than air, gases, bad timbers, and tunnels like veins you can't map. At 20, I thought I knew better. One fall evening, I went out there alone with a flashlight, just to see if I could get closer than anyone else. The trail was narrow and overgrown. The closer I got, the quieter the woods became. Squirrels, owls, even the wind seemed to avoid the place. The mine itself sat in a cut carved out of the hillside, framed by rotting timbers. The sign that once read "Keep Out" had collapsed into rust. I stood 20 feet away and shined my light inside. The beam caught rock, water trickling down, and the black beyond. No echo when I called out, just my own voice swallowed whole. That's when I heard it. A murmur, not words, but the cadence of speech. One voice, then two, low and steady, as if people were holding a conversation deep inside. I froze. Nobody had any reason to be in there. The last collapse had been decades ago. I stepped closer, and the voices sharpened, still muffled, like they were bouncing along timbers and stone. My light caught a beam of condensation drifting outward, shimmering like smoke. I thought of drifters, maybe squatters, maybe kids hiding. I called out, "Hello." The voices stopped instantly. The mine breathed silence back at me, deeper than before. My hand tightened on the flashlight. I stepped backward, slow. Then, after maybe 10 seconds, a new sound rose, 3 sharp knocks echoing from somewhere far inside, timed like a signal. I ran. I didn't care how it looked. My boots caught roots. Mud splashed my jeans, but I didn't stop until I reached the trailhead. When I turned back, I could still hear it faintly, echoing out of that black throat. The rhythm of voices again, overlapping, whispering things I couldn't understand. The woods carried the sound in strands, like it wanted me to take it home. Later, I asked my uncle if anyone still used that mine. He said no. He said some shafts hold air currents that make noises like an instrument. I wanted to believe him, but air doesn't stop talking when you arrive, then start again after you leave. It doesn't call out 3 knocks to tell you you've been noticed. Appalachia hides more than it shows. A figure standing too still on a foggy road, knocks that keep rhythm with rain on tin. A car that mirrors your every move on a back road. A whistle circling your camp like it knows the tune better than you. None of it breaks the rules of the world. That's what makes it hard to shake. These stories remind us that the deep woods, Dante, have to be haunted by ghosts to feel dangerous. They're haunted by distance, by silence, by people and patterns you can't quite explain. If you've ever felt eyes on you out there, you know how quickly the ridges can turn familiar ground into something alien. If you have a story from these mountains a night when the woods didn't let you walk out unchanged, send it in. Maybe telling it will keep someone else from ignoring that first wrong sound, or that figure standing exactly where they shouldn't be.